The archive room was cold, climate-controlled to preserve the artifacts stored within. Deho pulled his jacket tighter as he followed Bora through rows of shelving units that stretched up 20 feet toward the ceiling. Each shelf held carefully packaged items, sealed in protective cases with identification numbers and hazard warnings. "They're keeping them in here?" Teeman asked, his breath visible in the chilled air. "These could be the most important archaeological finds in galactic history, and they're just on a shelf?" "Where else would we keep them?" Bora replied, scanning shelf numbers as they walked. "Until 3 days ago, these were just mystery objects." "Interesting, sure, but not critical. Now." She trailed off, finding the section she wanted. "Now they're evidence of something we don't understand at all." She pulled down a case and set it on the examination table in the center of the room. Inside was the clay pot Deho had seen in the holographic display, the one with proto-Hangul markings. Under the bright examination lights, the details were even clearer. Deho carefully photographed every angle while Bora took notes on her tablet. The pot was small, maybe 6 inches tall, with a rounded bottom and narrow neck. The clay had been fired at relatively low temperatures, consistent with early Korean pottery techniques. But the markings were what drew his attention. "These symbols," he said, pointing without touching, "they're not just similar to Hangul. Some of them are identical. But that's impossible. Hangul was invented by King Sejong in the 1400s. It was a deliberate creation, not an evolution from older scripts." "Maybe the official history is wrong," Bora suggested. "Maybe there was an older writing system that Hangul was based on, and it just wasn't recorded properly. Or maybe," Teeman said quietly, "this pod is from the 1400s and it fell back in time." They all stared at the pod in silence. The implications of that were staggering. Not just objects from ancient history scattering through space, but objects from any time period: medieval Korea, modern Earth, the future. "Let's look at the next one," Deho said, not ready to think about that possibility yet. They worked through the collection methodically over the next 6 hours. Each artifact told a story, and each story was impossible. A bronze mirror from what looked like the Three Kingdoms period, found on a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant. A piece of woven silk that carbon dating placed at 2,000 years old, discovered in an asteroid field. A stone Buddha statue, small enough to fit in one hand, that had been floating in space inside a survival pod of unknown design. That last one made Deho's skin crawl. Someone put this in a survival pod. Deliberately, they wanted to save it. Or send it somewhere, Bora added. She was examining the pod's remains in another case. "Look at this construction. The materials are synthetic, definitely manufactured. But the design doesn't match any known civilization's technology." Teeman was busy with his tablet, cross-referencing locations again. "Found another pattern," he announced. "The more recent artifacts, the ones from only a few thousand years ago, they're all clustered in the same region of space. The really old ones, 50,000 years plus, are spread out everywhere." "What does that mean?" Deho asked. "No idea. But it's weird, right?" Everything about this was weird. Deho moved to the next case, which contained something that made his heart skip a beat. It was a jade carving, pale green and translucent, depicting a simplified human figure in a meditation pose. The style was distinctly Korean, from the Joseon dynasty period at the earliest. But according to the catalog, this object was 30,000 years old. "This is from maybe 500 years ago," Deho said flatly. "At the oldest. The carving technique, the polish, the style. This is recent." Bora checked the dating records. Multiple methods confirmed the age. Carbon dating of organic residue, thermoluminescence of the surrounding soil where it was found, analysis of mineral deposits. All methods agree. 30,000 years plus or minus 2,000. Then the dating methods are wrong. All of them, independently verified by 3 different laboratories? Deho rubbed his face tiredly. "I don't know, Bora. I don't know. Nothing about this makes sense." They continued working, cataloging, and photographing each artifact. Deho found himself falling into the familiar rhythm of archaeological documentation, letting the work occupy his mind instead of the impossible questions. Measure, photograph, describe, hypothesize. The fundamental skills of his profession, applied to a mystery that defied everything he thought he knew about space and time. Teeman was the one who found the most disturbing piece. It was near the back of the archive, in a case marked with extra security seals. He called the others over, his voice shaking slightly. You guys need to see this. The case contained what looked like a smartphone. Not a device that resembled a smartphone. An actual modern Earth smartphone complete with a cracked screen and a faded rubber case. No, Deho said. No, absolutely not. Bora was already scanning the identification placard. Discovered 6 months ago on Keth 7, the same planet where they found the navigation stone. Found in the same cave system, actually. Estimated age, and she went silent. How old? Deho demanded. 40,000 years. The room felt like it was spinning. Deho sat down heavily on a nearby stool, staring at the phone. It was impossible. Smartphones had existed for maybe 20 years. There was no way, no possible way that one could be 40,000 years old, unless it fell through time. Can we access it? He asked. See what's on it? The battery is dead, obviously, Bora said. But the museum's tech division has been trying to interface with it. No success so far. The charging port doesn't match any known standard. It's a micro USB, Taman said, moving closer. That's a standard from Earth. We can charge this. Do it, Deho said immediately. I need to see what's on that phone. While Taman went to find a compatible charger, Deho and Bora continued through the remaining artifacts. There were more impossibilities. A metal coin from modern South Korea, a plastic button, a fragment of synthetic fabric, objects that couldn't possibly be more than a few decades old, all dated to thousands or tens of thousands of years in the past. It's accelerating, Bora said suddenly. Look at the discovery dates. The oldest artifacts in this collection were found over a century ago. But these modern ones? All discovered in the last 5 years. And the rate is increasing. 3 last year, 7 this year so far? What does that mean? I think it means whatever is happening is getting worse. Or more frequent, or... She looked at him and there was genuine fear in her eyes. Or it's building towards something. Taman returned with a charging cable and a portable power bank. His hands were shaking as he carefully opened the case containing the smartphone and connected it to power. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered to life, showing a low battery symbol. They waited in tense silence as the phone charged. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then the screen changed, showing a lock screen with a date displayed at the top. The date was from next year. That's impossible, Deho whispered. But the word was starting to lose all meaning. Everything about this was impossible. The lock screen showed a background image. It was a photo of Deho himself, older and weathered, standing in front of ancient stone ruins under an alien sky. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's you, Taman said unnecessarily. Deho couldn't speak. He stared at his own face, looking back at him from a phone that shouldn't exist, dated to a year that hadn't happened yet, found in a cave and dated to 40,000 years in the past. Try to unlock it, Bora said. I don't know the password, Deho said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. Taman tried anyway, swiping on the screen. To everyone's surprise, it opened. There was no password. The home screen appeared, showing various app icons. Most were standard, but one was unfamiliar, simply labeled, Watch This. Don't, Deho said. But Taman was already tapping the icon. A video player opened, showing a single file. Taman pressed play. The screen showed Deho again, the same older version from the lock screen photo. He was sitting in what looked like a shelter of some kind, rough walls visible behind him. He looked directly into the camera and spoke in Korean, his voice tired but urgent. Bora translated as he spoke. If you're watching this, I've either succeeded or failed. I'm not sure which. The artifacts aren't from the past traveling forward. They're from now traveling backward. We're stuck in a causality loop, the video Deho continued. The stone you identified started this whole investigation, but I only knew what it was because of this message. You have to break the cycle. Don't. The video cut to static and died. The phone screen went black and wouldn't respond to any input, even though it still had battery power. The 3 of them stood in the cold archive room, staring at the dead phone. None of them spoke. What could they say? They had just watched a man receive a message from himself. A message that predated its own existence, warning about a loop that its very existence seemed to perpetuate. The conference room was far too large for just 3 people, but Kelthir insisted on using it anyway. The museum director was an impressive figure, standing nearly 8 feet tall with features that seemed to blend avian and reptilian characteristics. Feathers covered their head and shoulders, but scales ran down their arms and back. When they moved, it was with a precise, controlled grace that spoke of both intelligence and barely contained energy. "Show me again," Kelthir said, their voice carrying the peculiar clicking quality of their species. "Explain how you can be certain." Deho pulled up images on the large holographic display, comparing the museum's stone tablet with examples from Earth. He had been explaining for nearly an hour now, and his throat was getting dry. "Look at the carving technique. The depth, the angle of the cuts, the tool marks in the grooves. These were made with flint or obsidian tools using specific striking methods that humans developed. The pattern isn't just similar. It's identical." He swiped to another image. "And these lunar markings? They track a 29-day cycle. That's Earth's moon. No other known planet in the surveyed galaxy has a moon with that exact orbital period. This wasn't made to track some alien moon. It was made to track our moon from Earth by humans." Mirvan stood nearby, their crystalline forms still occasionally flashing with agitation. "The implications are staggering." "If this is true..." "It is true," Deho interrupted, not unkindly. "I'm an archaeologist. This is literally what I do. I look at old rocks and figure out who made them and why. This rock, humans made it. The why is navigation. The how it got here is the part I can't answer." Kelthir was silent for a long moment, their feathered crest rising and falling slowly. Finally, they tapped a control on their wrist device. "Bring up collection storage. Filter for unidentified artifacts. Age range 30 to 50,000 standard years." The holographic display shifted, showing a database interface. Numbers scrolled past. And then thumbnails of objects began appearing in a grid. Deho felt his stomach drop as the grid filled. There were dozens of items, each one carefully photographed and cataloged. "These are artifacts we have been unable to classify," Kelthir explained. "They were discovered across multiple expeditions over the past 2 centuries. We labeled them as Civilization Zero artifacts, theorizing they came from a precursor race that went extinct before any current spacefaring species evolved." They looked at Deho with eyes that seemed far too intelligent. "I believe you're about to tell me we were wrong." Deho stood and walked closer to the display, scrolling through the images. His heart was pounding now. There was a clay pot with markings that looked disturbingly similar to early Korean pottery, a jade carving that could have come from any Neolithic site in East Asia, a woven basket fragment that still retained enough structure to identify the weaving technique, a stone knife with a handle wrapped in what appeared to be preserved leather. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Yet here it is," Kelthir said. The door to the conference room opened, and 2 more humans entered. Deho recognized them from the briefing he'd received before arriving at the station. Bora was a linguist who had been working at the museum for 5 years, specializing in dead languages and unknown scripts. She was in her 40s with short hair and sharp eyes that took in everything. Behind her came Taman, a young intern who looked barely out of university, clutching a tablet and looking simultaneously excited and terrified. "We came as soon as we heard," Bora said without preamble. She looked at the display and sucked in a breath. "Oh no, that's Hangul. What?" Deho moved to the image she was pointing at. It was a close-up of a clay fragment with symbols carved into it. "Not exactly Hangul," Bora corrected herself, moving closer, "but it's Proto-Hangul. The alphabet wasn't officially created until the 15th century. But there were earlier writing systems that influenced it. This looks like..." She trailed off, manipulating the image to rotate it. "This looks like a transitional form, maybe 3,000 years old. But that doesn't make sense because Hangul was an invented alphabet, not an evolved one." "Nothing about this makes sense," Deho muttered. He pulled up another artifact, this one a metal tool of some kind. "What's the DNA analysis on this one?" Kelthir accessed the file. "We found organic residue on the handle. DNA testing confirmed it as originating from Earth, specifically matching East Asian human populations. We assumed contamination from handling, but the residue was sealed beneath mineral deposits that formed over thousands of years." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Taman raised his hand tentatively like a student in class. "I'm sorry, but I had a thought." "Speak," Kelthir said. "I was looking at the discovery locations for all these artifacts," Taman said, pulling up a star map on his tablet and projecting it to the main display. "They're spread out across 17 star systems, right? But when you plot them..." He manipulated the display and the locations began to connect with lines. They're all near naturally occurring wormholes or gravitational anomalies. Every single one. Deho stared at the map. The pattern was undeniable. Each artifact had been found in a system containing either a collapsed wormhole, a neutron star, or some other space-time distortion. Wormholes, Bora said slowly. You're thinking the artifacts traveled through wormholes? Maybe? Taman looked uncertain. I mean, there are theories about natural wormholes connecting different points in space and time. What if these artifacts just fell through? Like someone drops a pot in ancient Korea, and it falls through a rift and ends up on an alien planet 40,000 years in the past. That would require wormholes that connect to Earth, Kelthier pointed out. And that remains stable enough to transport physical objects without destroying them. The energy requirements alone would be impossible. Yeah, I know, Taman said, deflating slightly. It was just a thought. But Daiho was still staring at the map, his mind working. What if it's not impossible? What if Earth is just naturally connected to these points in space-time? Like a hub? There's no scientific basis for that, Mervon said. But they didn't sound entirely convinced. Bora was scrolling through files on her tablet, her expression intense. Wait, everyone shut up for a second. She pulled up a document and projected it. This is a survey of ancient myths and legends from various galactic civilizations. I've been compiling it for my research on cultural patterns. Look at this entry from the Rexian archives. She highlighted a passage. Deho couldn't read the alien script, but Bora translated aloud. They call them the Wandering Ones. Objects that appear without explanation, bearing the marks of an unknown civilization. The Rexians have records going back 15,000 years, and these mystery artifacts appear throughout their history. She pulled up another file. The Quillari have similar legends. They call them gifts from the void. The Nethians have stories about ghost tools that appear in sacred caves. You're saying this has been happening for thousands of years, Deho said. Human artifacts have been randomly appearing across the galaxy for millennia. It would explain why we have so many of them, Kelthier said quietly, and why they span such different time periods. This jade carving is dated to 50,000 years ago. This metal knife is only 2,000 years old. If they're falling through time as well as space, then the timeline doesn't matter, Deho finished. Something from ancient Korea could arrive before something from the Stone Age. Depending on where and when the wormhole connects. Mervin's crystalline body was flashing rapidly now, cycling through colors that Deho was starting to recognize as confusion and excitement. We need to test this theory. If we can find a correlation between artifact appearance and local space-time distortions, we need to tell Earth, Bora interrupted. This is huge. This changes everything about how we understand physics and causality. We need to tell the Galactic Council, Kelthier corrected. This affects everyone. If Earth is some kind of temporal nexus point, if objects are randomly falling through time and space. They paused, their crest rising fully. If objects can fall through, what else might? People, ships? The implications hung in the air like a weight. Daiho felt suddenly very small, very human, and very far from home. He looked at the display showing dozens of impossible artifacts, each one a mystery wrapped in an enigma. This is going to get complicated, isn't it? He said. Kelthier's laugh was a sharp clicking sound. Dr. Deho, I believe complicated is an understatement. Deho stepped off the transport shuttle with his backpack slung over one shoulder, looking decidedly unimpressed by the massive structure floating before him. The Grand Galactic Museum was supposed to be one of the wonders of known space, a gleaming monument to culture and history that drew visitors from hundreds of worlds. To him, it just looked like an oversized shopping mall made of crystal and pretension. Dr. Deho, welcome to Velthara Prime, said a voice that sounded like wind chimes being gently struck. The speaker was Mervon, a being made entirely of what appeared to be living crystal. Light refracted through their body in rainbow patterns that shifted as they moved. We are honored to host a human archaeologist for our cultural exchange program. Daiho offered a polite smile and a small bow. Thanks for having me. Just so you know, I mostly work with pottery shards and old trash heaps. This place looks a bit fancier than I'm used to. Mervon's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with what might have been amusement. I assure you, much of archaeology involves what you call old trash. Come, let me show you our collections. I believe you will find them fascinating. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past exhibition halls showcasing artifacts from civilizations Deho had never heard of. There were weapons made of living metal, paintings that moved and breathed, sculptures that existed in 4 dimensions and gave him a headache to look at. Mervyn explained each one with obvious passion, reciting dates and historical context with practiced ease. Deho nodded along politely, taking pictures with his tablet and trying not to yawn. It was interesting in an academic sense, but after 6 hours of travel through jump space, he mostly wanted coffee and a bed. They entered a wing labeled Ancient Civilizations, the First Era. The lighting here was dimmer, more reverent. Display cases lined the walls, each containing objects that had been carefully preserved and labeled. Mervyn slowed their pace, their crystalline body dimming slightly. "This section represents our greatest mysteries," Mervyn said softly. "These artifacts predate all known civilizations in the galactic record. Some we have dated back 50,000 standard years or more. We do not know who made them or what became of their creators." Deho perked up slightly. Unknown civilizations were interesting. He approached the first case, which held what looked like a metallic sphere covered in symbols. The placard identified it as 47,000 years old. Origin unknown, purpose unknown. "Heavy," Deho observed. "Probably ceremonial." "We believe so as well," Mervyn agreed. They moved through the exhibition slowly. Mervyn treated each artifact like a sacred relic, and in truth many of them were impressive. There was a clear reverence in how they were displayed, how the other museum visitors spoke in hushed whispers when viewing them. Then Deho stopped dead in front of a particular case. Inside was a flat stone tablet, roughly rectangular, covered in geometric patterns that had been carved with surprising precision. The stone itself was a familiar gray-brown color, smooth from handling. The patterns were arranged in careful rows and columns with circular marks at regular intervals. "Ah, this is perhaps our most enigmatic piece," Mervyn said, moving closer to the display. "We discovered it on a dead planet in the outer reaches, in a cave system that had been sealed for millennia. The dating is uncertain, but our best estimates place it at approximately 40,000 standard years old. It predates the oldest known civilization by at least 15,000 years." Deho squinted at the stone, tilting his head. He pulled out his tablet and zoomed in on the patterns through the case's transparent shield. Then he frowned, zoomed in more, and his eyebrows went up. "That's weird," he muttered. "Indeed," Mervyn agreed solemnly. "We have been unable to decipher the markings. The mathematical precision suggests high intelligence, but the purpose remains." "No, I mean, it's weird that it's here," Deho interrupted. He looked up at Mervyn with confusion written across his face. "This is from Earth. It's a navigation stone. Upper Paleolithic, probably. Used for tracking stars and moon phases for sea travel. I'm pretty sure anyway. I kind of skipped that class in undergrad, so I might be off by a few thousand years." The silence that followed was profound. Mervyn's crystalline body went completely still, their usual gentle shimmer stopping entirely. Another visitor, a floating jellyfish-like creature, paused mid-drift and rotated several eye stalks toward them. I beg your pardon," Mervyn finally said. Deho pointed at the patterns. "See these circles? Those mark lunar cycles, and these lines here correspond to star positions. Early humans used these for navigation when they were developing seafaring technology. This particular style looks Korean, or maybe from that region. We find them sometimes in coastal archaeological sites." He shrugged. "It's cool that you guys have one, but I'm not sure how it ended up out here. Did someone donate it or something?" Mervyn's form began to flash rapidly through different colors, which Deho had learned meant they were experiencing strong emotion. "Dr. Deho, this artifact was discovered on Keth 7, a planet located 147 light-years from Earth. The planet has been dead for at least 60,000 years. There are no signs of human presence anywhere in that star system. We have dated this object to approximately 40,000 standard years before present day." Now it was Deho's turn to go still. He looked at the stone again, then at Mervyn, then back at the stone. That doesn't make sense." "No," Mervyn agreed, their voice tight. "It does not." Deho pressed closer to the case, studying the stone with new intensity. "Can I see the full analysis? Dating methods, discovery context, everything?" Yes, of course. "But Dr. Deho, are you certain about this identification? Perhaps there is convergent evolution in tool design. Or the chances of an alien civilization independently developing the exact same lunar calendar system used by early Korean seafarers is basically zero." Daiho said, his mind now racing. Even the execution is the same. See how the lines are carved? That's done with a specific type of flint tool. And the spacing, the proportions. No, this is human. I'd stake my reputation on it. Mirvan was quiet for a long moment. Then they said, I need to contact the museum director immediately. Dr. Daiho, would you be willing to examine other artifacts in our collection? Specifically those from the same period that we have been unable to identify. How many are there? 53 objects discovered across 17 different star systems. Daiho felt a chill run down his spine. 53 human artifacts scattered across dozens of light years, all supposedly older than human civilization. He thought about ancient astronaut theories, about all the crackpot documentaries that claimed aliens built the pyramids or visited Earth in flying saucers. Except this was the opposite. This was humans somehow scattering their garbage across the galaxy thousands of years before they invented the wheel. Yeah, he said slowly. Yeah, I'll take a look at them. Mirvan's crystalline form flashed bright white, a sign of extreme agitation. This discovery could change everything we know about galactic history. If humans were spacefaring 40,000 years ago, if they reached the stars before any of us, we weren't, Daiho said firmly. Trust me, human history is well documented. We barely figured out agriculture 12,000 years ago. We definitely weren't building starships in the Paleolithic. Then how? Mirvan asked, and there was something almost desperate in their chiming voice. Daiho looked at the stone, at this impossible object sitting in a museum case light years from where it should be. He thought about all the things he didn't know, all the mysteries archaeology constantly threw at him. I have absolutely no idea, he admitted. The museum lights seemed to dim slightly, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to inspire awe, and it succeeded. The circular room stretched 300 feet across, with seating rising in tiers around a central platform. Each seat was occupied by a representative from one of the major spacefaring civilizations, and beyond them, hundreds more observers filled the gallery. Holographic projections allowed billions more to watch from across known space. Daiho stood on the central platform and tried not to throw up. He had given lectures before, presented at conferences, even appeared on a few educational documentaries back on Earth. But this was different. This was every major civilization in the galaxy watching him, waiting for him to explain the impossible. Next to him stood Ambassador Jisoo, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. She was a composed woman in her 60s, with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. She had reviewed their findings for 3 days straight before agreeing to bring it to the Council's attention. Members of the Galactic Council, Jisoo began, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. We are here to present findings that challenge our understanding of physics, causality, and galactic history. Dr. Daiho, a human archaeologist, will explain what we have discovered. Daiho stepped forward, and the massive holographic display behind him activated, showing images of the artifacts. His mouth was dry, but he forced himself to speak clearly. 3 weeks ago, I identified an object in the Grand Galactic Museum as human in origin. This object was dated to 40,000 years old and found 147 light-years from Earth. He pulled up the image of the navigation stone. This is a stone tablet used by early Korean seafarers to track stars and lunar cycles. We have found similar objects in archaeological sites on Earth, dating back 30 to 40,000 years. A murmur ran through the chamber. Daiho continued. Since then, we have identified 53 additional objects as human in origin. These objects span a time period from 50,000 years ago to next year. He paused to let that sink in. They have been found across 17 star systems, all containing natural gravitational anomalies or wormhole remnants. And we have no explanation for how they got there. The murmur became a roar of voices. Delegates were standing, their translation devices creating a cacophony of different languages, all demanding answers. The council speaker, a massive being that looked like a cross between a tree and a squid, raised several tentacles for silence. Dr. Daiho, the speaker said, their voice resonating through the chamber like a deep bell. You claim that humans were spacefaring 50,000 years ago? No, Daiho said firmly. Human history is well documented. We developed agriculture 12,000 years ago. We reached space 200 years ago. We did not build starships in the Stone Age. Then how do you explain these artifacts? This came from the Vrexian delegate, a being covered in metallic scales that shifted colors with their mood. Currently, they were showing aggressive red. Are you suggesting they materialized from nothing? I'm suggesting they traveled through time, Deho said, and the chamber erupted again. It took 5 minutes to restore order. When the noise finally died down, the Vrexian delegate was still standing, their scales now a deep orange. Time travel is theoretically impossible, they said. The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of multiple stars. You are asking us to believe in fantasy. I'm asking you to look at the evidence, Deho replied. He brought up Taman's star map, showing the correlation between artifact locations and space-time anomalies. Every single artifact was found near a natural wormhole or gravitational distortion. We believe these anomalies are somehow connected to Earth, creating pathways through both space and time. Connected how? Asked a delegate from a species Deho didn't recognize, a floating collection of geometric shapes that somehow spoke with a melodious voice. We don't know, Deho admitted. But Earth may be a natural nexus point in spacetime, a hub where these anomalies converge. Ambassador Jisoo stepped forward. Earth has no record of ancient space travel. We have no lost technology, no forgotten starships. Whatever is causing these artifacts to appear, it is not through any action humanity took. We are as confused as you are. Convenient, the Vrexian delegate said sharply. You claim ignorance while your species' artifacts appear throughout the galaxy, predating all of ours. The oldest Vrexian artifact is 15,000 years old. You claim objects 50,000 years old. We're not claiming superiority, Jisoo said, her voice hardening. We're trying to understand a phenomenon that apparently involves our world. If you have an alternative explanation, we would love to hear it. A new voice spoke up, thin and reedy. It came from Themris, an elderly Quillari scientist that Deho recognized from the museum. The Quillari looked like 4-foot-tall walking mushrooms, and Themris was particularly ancient. Their caps spotted with age. I may have a hypothesis, Themris said, shuffling forward with the aid of a walking stick. If the council will permit an old scientist to speculate. The speaker gestured permission. Themris moved to the center platform and, despite their small size, commanded attention. I have studied space-time anomalies for 6 decades, Themris began. Natural wormholes are incredibly rare, but they do exist. They form when gravity becomes so intense that space itself tears. Most collapse immediately, but some, under very specific conditions, can persist. They manipulated the holographic display, bringing up complex equations that made Deho's head hurt. Now, imagine a planet that exists at a point where multiple space-time curvatures intersect. A cosmic coincidence, if you will. Such a planet might develop persistent connections to various points in space and time. You're saying Earth is special? The Vrexian delegate asked skeptically. I'm saying Earth might be naturally connected to various points in space-time through stable wormholes, Themris corrected. Not through any action of humanity, but simply through cosmic chance. An object on Earth's surface might, under the right conditions, fall through one of these connections. It would appear somewhere else in space, and possibly someone else in time. That still requires massive energy, another delegate objected. Not if the wormhole is naturally occurring and already stable, Themris replied. Think of it like a river. You don't need energy to float downstream, you just need to fall in. Deho felt a chill. It made a terrible kind of sense. Random objects falling through invisible rifts in spacetime, scattering across the galaxy. No intention, no control. Just cosmic chance and bad luck. But the phone, Bora said from where she stood in the witness section. One of the artifacts is a smartphone dated to next year, but found 40,000 years in the past. How does that fit your theory? The chamber went silent. Themris's cap drooped slightly. That, they admitted, is where my hypothesis encounters difficulty. If an object from the future can arrive in the past, then we're not dealing with simple spatial displacement. We're dealing with causality loops. Show them the video, Jisoo said quietly to Deho. Deho nodded reluctantly. He pulled up the file and the image of his older self appeared on the massive display. When the video played, with Bora providing real-time translation for the delegates, the chamber became absolutely silent. We're stuck in a causality loop. The message cut off as it had before, leaving nothing but static and questions. Deho stood in front of billions of watching eyes and said the only thing he could say, I don't know what this means. I don't know how I recorded that message or when or why. I don't know if it's real or some kind of fake, but that phone exists. It's been verified by multiple laboratories, and it's dated to 40,000 years old while displaying a date from next year. This is a trick, the Vrexian delegate said, but their scales had shifted to a confused purple. Some kind of human deception to claim historical precedence. To what end? Jisoo snapped. What would we gain? We're trying to solve a mystery, not start a diplomatic incident. If you want to believe we somehow planted 53 artifacts across the galaxy over the past century, including on worlds we'd never visited, just to make ourselves look special, then you're welcome to that theory. But it's absurd. The Vrexian started to respond, but the speaker raised tentacles again. Enough, this matter requires investigation, not accusation. I propose we form a joint scientific commission to study these artifacts and the phenomenon that created them. Representatives from multiple civilizations, including humanity. There were nods and gestures of agreement from around the chamber. The Vrexian delegate sat down, still showing conflicted colors. Themris spoke again. There is one more thing the Council should know. I have been monitoring gravitational sensors across the galaxy. In the past 5 years, there has been a significant increase in space-time disturbances near Earth's solar system. Small fluctuations, barely detectable but consistent. What does that mean? The speaker asked. It means whatever is happening is accelerating. The rate of artifact appearance is increasing because the phenomenon itself is intensifying. Themris looked directly at Deho. Something is building, and I believe it will reach a critical point soon. How soon? Jisoo asked. Based on the progression of disturbances, weeks, possibly days. The chamber erupted into chaos once more, but Deho barely heard it. He was thinking about the video, about his older self warning about a loop. The alert came at 3 a.m. station time. Deho was jerked awake by the emergency klaxon and the flashing red lights in his quarters. His tablet was buzzing with urgent messages, and when he grabbed it, he saw a single message from Kelthir that made his blood run. Cold massive temporal anomaly detected near Earth. Come to the observatory, immediately. He threw on clothes and ran through the corridors of Velthara Prime Station. Other people were emerging from their quarters, confused and frightened. The emergency system was announcing something in multiple languages, but Deho's translator couldn't keep up with the overlapping voices. The observatory was chaos. Scientists from a dozen species crowded around displays showing sensor readings that Deho couldn't understand, but he didn't need to understand the numbers to know something catastrophic was happening. The expressions of terror and awe were universal. Deho! Bora waved him over to where she stood with Taman and Themris. The old Quillari scientist was manipulating a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. Except there was something new there, something that definitely hadn't existed before. A massive structure hung in space near Earth's moon. It wasn't a ship or a station. It looked like a wound in reality itself, a spiraling vortex of distorted spacetime that glowed with colors Deho didn't have names for. What is that? He asked, though part of him already knew the answer. A stable wormhole, Themris said, their voice shaking with either excitement or fear. Possibly both, but not like any naturally occurring phenomenon we've ever seen. Something is holding it open. Something with technology so advanced that our sensors can barely register it. How big is it? Taman asked. Big enough to fit a city through, Bora replied. And it's growing. The display shifted, showing energy readings. Deho didn't need to be a physicist to see that the numbers were climbing rapidly. The wormhole was expanding, and based on the projections, it would reach Earth's orbit within hours. Have we made contact? Deho asked. Is anyone coming through? As if in answer to his question, a new alarm sounded. The display changed again, this time showing a vessel emerging from the wormhole. It was enormous, easily 5 miles long, with a design that seemed to blend organic curves with geometric precision. The hull glowed with the same strange colors as the wormhole itself. That's a human ship, Bora whispered. Look at the markings, she was right. As the sensors zoomed in, Deho could make out text along the hull. It was in Hangul, the Korean alphabet, but the style was different. More fluid, more evolved. The text said something he could barely comprehend. Earth Historical Preservation Fleet Vessel Eternity, he read aloud. Time index. I don't even know how to pronounce that number. It's a date, Themris said quietly. Approximately 40,000 years from now. The chamber fell silent. A ship from 40,000 years in the future. crewed by humans emerging from a controlled wormhole. The implications were staggering. More ships were coming through now. Dozens of them, each one unique in design but clearly human in origin. They took up positions around the wormhole, maintaining what looked like a defensive perimeter. Then a new signal came through, broadcasting on all known communication frequencies. "This is Captain Hyan of the Preservation Fleet. We are establishing contact with Velthera Prime Station. Please respond." Kelther moved to the communications panel, their feathers standing on end with agitation. "This is Museum Director Kelther of Velthera Prime. We receive you, Captain Hyan. What is your purpose here?" There was a brief pause, and then the main display activated, showing a human face. Captain Hyan looked to be in her 40s, with short dark hair and eyes that held the weight of impossible knowledge. Behind her, Daeho could see a bridge that looked like something out of a dream, all flowing surfaces and holographic interfaces. "We are here to stabilize the temporal cascade," Hyan said. "The artifact dispersal has reached critical mass. If we don't intervene, the causality loop will collapse and the timeline will unravel." "What does that mean?" Jisu's voice came through. The ambassador had arrived at the observatory and was pushing her way through the crowd. Hyan's expression softened slightly. "Ambassador Jisu, it's an honor. Your work in establishing first contact protocols is still studied in our time." She took a breath. "The artifacts you've been finding are not random. They're markers, breadcrumbs we've been leaving across time and space for thousands of years, trying to prevent a catastrophic event." "What event?" Kelther demanded. "In 500 years from your current time, a species you haven't encountered yet will attempt to weaponize natural wormholes. Their experiment will tear open a rift in space-time that consumes dozens of star systems. Billions will die. We've been trying to prevent it by establishing early warning systems, by planting knowledge where it can be found, by creating this exact moment." Daeho felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "You've been causing the artifact dispersal? On purpose?" "Not all of it," Hyan said. "Earth is naturally connected to various points in space-time. That's true. Objects fall through randomly, always have. But we've been adding to it, deliberately leaving markers that would eventually lead to this conversation. To you, Dr. Daeho, identifying the navigation stone." "Why me?" Daeho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Another figure moved into view behind Hyan. Daeho's breath caught in his throat. It was him, an older version, scarred and weathered exactly as he had appeared in the video. "Because you're the one who figured it out," the older Daeho said. "You always do in every iteration of the timeline. You identify the stone. You start the investigation. You bring it to the Galactic Council's attention. You're the trigger." "The video," Bora said suddenly. "You recorded that video. You're the one who created the loop." "We're all creating the loop," the older Daeho replied. "Every action we take has already happened from one perspective and hasn't happened yet from another. Time doesn't work the way we think it does. It's not a line. It's a circle and we're walking around it." "This is insane," Jisu said. "You're telling us we have no choice? That everything is predetermined?" "No," Hyan said firmly. "We're telling you that you have one choice. The most important choice. We've tried hundreds of iterations, thousands of variations. In some, we don't intervene. The weaponization happens and billions die. In others, we intervene too early, and civilizations develop weapons based on our technology. That leads to even worse outcomes. This timeline," the older Daeho continued, "is the one where we get it right, where young me identifies the stone, where the investigation leads to the council, where everyone learns the truth at exactly the right moment, where in 500 years the right people will have the right knowledge to stop the catastrophe." Taman raised his hand tentatively, looking between the two Daehos. "But if you're from the future where the catastrophe was already prevented, doesn't that mean we succeed? Doesn't that mean we already made the right choice?" "Only if we complete the loop," Hyan said. "Only if we do exactly what we've always done." "The phone with the video? The older Daeho standing in front of you? The fleet arriving at this exact moment? All of it has to happen exactly as it always has, or the timeline branches and we lose everything we've fought for." Kelther's feathers were lying flat against their body now, a sign of deep distress. "You're asking us to trust that you know the future, to believe that everything we do is part of some grand, predetermined plan. We're asking you to trust that we've lived through this," the older Daeho said. "I remember standing where young me is standing right now. I remember the fear, the confusion, the feeling that I had no control. But I also remember making the choice to trust, to believe that sometimes the path forward is the path we've already walked. What do we need to do? Jisoo asked. Her voice was steady, but Daeho could see the tension in her shoulders. Form the research commission as you were planning, Hyeon said. Study the artifacts. Let the knowledge spread naturally through the galactic community. In 200 years, make sure the preservation fleet is established. In 300, develop the temporal monitoring systems. Every step has been documented. We'll provide you with the records, and what about now? Daeho asked. What happens to me? The older Daeho smiled, and it was sad and knowing. You live your life. You continue your work. In 30 years, you join the preservation fleet. You spend decades learning about time, causality, and the nature of existence. And eventually, you travel back to this moment and have this conversation with yourself. Do I have a choice? You always have a choice. But you'll make the right one. You always do. The wormhole was stabilizing now, the wild energies calming into a steady spiral of light. The fleet ships were adjusting their positions, forming a perfect pattern around it. Daeho looked at his older self, at the scars and the weight of years, and wondered what he had seen, what he had done, what he would do. The loop, Themris said suddenly. It's elegant. Terrifying but elegant. The artifacts lead to the investigation. The investigation leads to knowledge. Knowledge leads to preparation. Preparation prevents catastrophe, and preventing catastrophe means we exist to send back the artifacts. A circle with no beginning, Bora said softly. And no end, Taemin added. Da.